So in this video, we'll try to understand the 12 houses in mundane astrology. Mundane astrology is an astrology about predicting the world events, about the geopolitics and also the financial status of different countries. So the 12 houses bear the same meaning in mundane as in natal astrology, similar meaning, but adapted to the circumstances of a nation rather than of a single person. So, if you see the first house of, let's say, you consider India. India got freedom in 15th August 1947 at midnight, 12 o'clock, and the capital is taken as Delhi. So, in preparing the mundane astrology chart, a birth chart of a nation, you generally consider when the nation is actually formed or when the nation got freedom. India got freedom on 15th August 1947 midnight, 12 o'clock. That's 12 o'clock at night, and that's the capital city is taken as New Delhi. That's taken as the birthplace of the country. But if you see the Constitution of India, right, the Constitution of India came into existence on 26 January 1950 at 10 a.m. in the Parliament in the New Delhi. So that is taken as the actual date of birth of India. Generally, some people take 15th August, but some people, the most accurate results you may get if you take 26 January 1950, 10 a.m. New Delhi, because that is the birth date when the Constitution of India came into existence. So the first house, if you observe the country and its inhabitants as a whole, its general condition of prosperity and health can be predicted based on the first house. So first house basically indicates the existence of a country. The country and the inhabitants can exist or not, right? And the second house, if you observe the national wealth, the taxation, revenue, and all places and activities concerned in money making, such as banks, the stock exchange, and trade, is related. The second house is mainly related to the trade making and also the money making, the financial status of a country. Because when the country is existed, if the first house is very good, then the second house actually denotes how it goes, right? How it goes. Then the second house actually indicates the resources that are actually boosting the country. The third house, if you observe, all means of inland transit, locomotion, communication, such as railways, road, and river traffic or motor cars, all means of uh, any kind of news and information, such as the post office, telegraphs, telephones, newspapers, magazines, any kind of communication you see. Uh, right, that is all third house, just like in the natal horoscope how it says about your communication focus and also about your neighbors. So the third house is actually in mundane astrology, it also shows something about the neighboring countries. And to an extent, literary work and education belong here so far as they bear upon intellectual activity, because third house is also the house of intelligence. If you observe the natal horoscopes, the same thing happens here. The intellectual activity of a country, the children's schools come more under the fifth house if you observe, but third house is only about literary activities. So the third house and ninth house is generally they are a bit related to an extent in this traveling kind of stuff. So aviation, if you observe, is sometimes included in the third house and also in the ninth house. So third house is basically the communication activity, right? The road transportation, everything. Because once the resources are formed in the second house, the next thing is moving the country, right? The mobile status of the country. And the fourth house, if you observe the land, the owners of the land, and whoever, mainly fourth house talks about the land, the crops, agriculture, and mines, buildings, right? The people as contrasted with the monarch, the democracy as contrasted with the aristocracy, the opposition in parliament. The fourth house indicates this kind of stuff. So a planet uh, close to this particular house may influence the weather according to its nature. So a malefic in this house may afflict the government through its opposition to the 10th house. So because fourth house is just opposite to the 10th house, and something is in the fourth house, some malefic is in the fourth house, then there would be some strong opposition in parliament. So if you see the fifth house, so fourth house is all about buildings, the land activity, the mining, the agricultural activity, right? The opposition, that is the fourth house. And the fifth house, if you observe, the fifth house is all about creative activities, something like theaters and all places of amusement, entertainment, pleasure. So even the birth rate, children, schools, sports, speculation, betting, you know, these are all to an extent sources of amusement, also excitement, amusement and entertainment. uh, so that all comes under fifth house, because once in the first house the country is formed, and in the second house the resources are formed, and in the third house the traveling and everything is going well, the communication is going well, and the fourth house when the buildings and agriculture everything is done. So the minimum basic things all are done in the first four houses. So the fifth house actually relates to the entertainment, the creativity, the sports activity, speculation, right? uh, this kind of, even, right, some kind of uh, speculation comes under amusement and entertainment. So a speculation is mainly in the fifth house. So in addition, there seems to be some reason for thinking that the fifth house has something to do with the society, especially high society and formal social functions, celebrations, right? uh, uh, Especially from those associated with royalty and the upper classes. So perhaps because of their pleasure giving character, right? So Saturn or some other maleficent sometimes in this house at times of uh, is considered to be not so comfortable. So fifth house may not relate to the house of uh, it's not completely related to earning money. It's mainly related to the fifth house is always entertainment, because in the second house you can always see the money activities going on. And if you see the sixth house basically comes under public health or sickness, national services. Sixth house is a service related house, generally the army, the navy, civil services, civil servants of the country, workers and employees generally. Sixth house is always about the health and also the services of the country. The seventh house is always the opposite of the first house. So first house is the country itself, so opposite of that is other countries, right? The foreign affairs, relations with other countries. It's the relations go friendly or hostile, political or commercial, marriage, you know, this kind of separation with other countries, right? This kind of stuff we talk about in the seventh house. And if you see the eighth house, a public morality, deaths, because eighth house is the house of death, generally the death duties. And also the financial relations with the foreign countries, because foreign countries are in the seventh house. So just next to the seventh house you have the second eighth house. So eighth house is the second house to the seventh house. Seventh house is foreign countries. So the money relations with the foreign countries is actually the eighth house, right? So eighth house actually indicates the sudden events of the country also. The ninth house, if you observe the shipping, sea traffic, long distance traffic generally, where the third house generally is short distance traffic, but ninth house is a very long distance traffic, whether connected with passengers or commerce, cables, wireless telegraphy, or the fiber activity, fiber cables. And also ninth house is very famous for religion, uh, and also the courts, judges. It's the house of dharma. Basically, ninth house is the house of dharma. It's also related to the higher literature, universities, professors, philosophical and scientific institutions, right? These are all come under the ninth house. Ninth house is the belief system of a country, basically. Tenth house is the basically the power. It's a powerhouse. So the president actually is indicated by the 10th house, the government, people in authority, the royalty, right? Eminent personalities, famous personalities, the national trade, the national reputation. Basically, 10th house is the house of reputation of the country, right? A power of the country, powerhouse of the country is the 10th house. So now the 11th house, if you see, it's a parliament, especially the house of uh, the the parliament, and also town and country councils and similar bodies, friends of the nations, legislation. So that's actually 11th house, the friends of the nation, the gains of the country, the profit that a country can make. The 12th house, if you observe, and as you see, the criminals, the spies, secret enemies of the country. It can be at home or abroad, the hospitals, right? The charitable institutions, the secret societies, and mystical, occult things happening in the country. So each house governs several different forms of activity, and when a planet is in a house, it does not affect all matters included under that house to an equal extent. So the nature of the planet actually decides the behavior. So and the sign in which it is actually placed, that's the main thing. So you see, Mercury in the ninth house affects the scientific and literary side of the house, because Mercury's nature is related to the literary side. It's not related to dharma, all the stuff, right? The belief system of the country. It's not that, because ninth house has so many things. Ninth house has long distance traffic, long distance communication, and also the belief system of the country, religion of the country, the courts, and also the judicial matters, and also ninth house is literature, right? The higher learning. Mercury is a planet of intelligence, so when it is coming in the ninth house, it can affect the scientific and literary side of that particular house. If Jupiter, let us say Jupiter is in the house, in the ninth house, then it has more influence upon the religion and and whatever uh, the religious places of that country, right? And if moon is coming here, moon is generally the planet of traveling, more related to traveling, right? So when moon is coming in the ninth house, then you can see something related to traveling can be impacted for that country, right? Based on the behavior of the moon. Okay. So if you see the eighth house, let us say the lord of the take the lord this time, lord of the eighth house is in the 10th, then that too in a fiery sign, let us say. So you can say the eighth house is in the 10th house. The eighth lord is generally treated as a kind of bad negative thing, which it's related to death. And if it is in the 10th house, it is transiting in the 10th house, then there is a probability that some royal personality may die. So if it is in a fiery sign, because fiery sign is actually, it aggravates the behavior also, right? So if it is in Taurus, right, it's a Taurus, then some very rich man, uh, right, may die, right? Because eighth house is related to death. So when generally Taurus is just the rich people. Sorry, uh, you can say Taurus is just related to the rich people, right? And if it is in Gemini, let us say, Gemini is mainly related to writing and all the stuff, right? We'll talk about that. So when eighth lord is coming and sitting in the 10th house, which is Gemini, let us say, so if 10th house is Gemini, then obviously you can understand the countries of Virgo ascendant. And in the transit, let us say the 8th lord Eighth lord is Mars, then for Virgo ascendant, then Mars if transiting a Gemini, then you can understand for the Virgo ascendant country, some writers may die. 10th house, let us say, if 10th house, generally the power house, uh, and also the government of a country, so it's passed so largely out of the hands of royalty and into the of the prime minister and the cabinet that it is difficult to discriminate uh, between all this, right? When 10th house is concerned, uh, it's actually the powerhouse of a country. It's You cannot say 10th house is related to uh, only a prime minister or the president of a country. It can be related to the cabinet also, because it's related to the power. It's really, you may say, if some eighth lord is transiting in the 10th house, you may not just say, the president of a country has some kind of problem, because you may not say, you may need to understand the whole transit completely, right? If the first house is also in the trouble, right, and also the 10th house, then you can understand to an extent, right, the country is in a bad situation and the president of that country may have some difficult time, right? So just because the 10th house is in trouble, you cannot say the president of a country is in trouble. It can be related to the cabinet, it can be related to the power of the people involving in the power, right? Based on the other planetary positions, the other houses, you can understand better. So, so the sun also places an important role here, because sun indicates a ruler. We will try to understand, uh, you can try to understand the individual planets also. Based on that, you can judge the behavior, because the significations of individual planets also plays a major role in understanding the stuff. So the strongest parts of this particular mundane astrology horoscope, the right, is the first house, the 10th house, the 7th and the 4th houses, the 1, 4, 7, 10. And then you generally check the 9th and 11th houses, then 8th and 12th generally. So remaining houses thereafter. Then the 12 zodiacal signs are very much important, the behavior, the nature of those houses, right? So generally in the Kalapurush Kundali, we consider Aries as the first house, right, and Taurus second, and so on. So the planets have same dignities in mundane houses uh, as they have in signs. The Sun and Mars belong being strong in the first house, you can say, right? Because Aries, if you see, it's Mars Mula Trikona house, right? Of course, Scorpio is another house of Mars, but still, the duty performing house is treated as Aries. So Aries is the most powerful house for Mars. So when Mars is here, it's very strong. And Sun exalts here in the Aries, 10 degrees. So Venus and the Moon in the second house, they are fine, right? So the signification of the signs, right, is very, very important. So Uranus is not comfortable in Capricorn. In mundane astrology, we not only consider uh, the planets, uh, the Sun, Mars, Rahu, Ketu, not only all this, the Indian basic planets, the 9 planets, we also consider Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto also. So Uranus, when it's afflicted in, it's actually not comfortable in Capricorn. So when Uranus comes to Capricorn, and generally it disturbs governments, right, of the countries which have Capricorn as the 10th house, basically. So because Uranus rarely comes to a sign, it's very very after long periods of time it comes, so it's very much important. So in the next video we can try to understand the different planets, right, and their significations in mundane astrology.